So next, I am delighted to introduce again Paul Winter, who will play for us Lullaby from the Great Mother Whale.
Thank you. May 27th, 1968 is a milestone date that I remember as well as I do my own birthday. I had heard from a friend that there was going to be a lecture in New York at Rockefeller University about whale songs. I had no idea what he was talking about, but because I was curious about sounds of all kinds, I decided to go. And it was an evening that changed my life. The presentation by Roger was masterful, eloquent, and astounding. And I was blown away by the soulful voices of the whales and their musicality, and it hit me almost the same way as the first time I had heard Charlie Parker play sax. The fact that they repeated these amazing patterns, and the fact that they were possibly going to be exterminated, it was all very, very galvanizing for me. And then in 1970, Roger put forth the album, Songs of the Humpback Whale, which, as you all know, had a tremendous impact. It touched the hearts of millions of people around the world and became the grandfather of all natural sound recordings. Never had an album done so much for so many. For the whales, it was huge. It probably did more for the cause of the whales than all the other efforts put together. And for us humans, it was a revelation, one in which I felt it had the seeds of a revolution, with the prospect of awakening a new relationship with the natural world, one that would transcend our age-old fears and prejudices. All of a sudden, we learned that this creature that had been regarded as a monster of the deep was not a monster, and that we didn't have to fear it. What had we known before? Only the stories of Jonah and Moby Dick. In the late 60s, we had learned that wolves are not our enemies, now the whales. So our optimism was, if we could overcome fears and prejudices about other creatures, maybe we could also about other peoples. What about the Russians? What about peoples of different colors than us? So this became a theme song that propelled us through the 70s and the 80s. It was a heady time. The environmental movement was blossoming, and the whale was its poster child. It seemed like the whale might be on the way to becoming a national totem. So the humpback whale was the great catalyst. I've always thought that this album was for us in the 70s as the Beatles had been in the 60s. All sorts of people were drawn to want to find ways to connect with the whales, almost as if whales were our long-lost relatives. Some people, like John Lilly, were intent to find how to communicate with them. I wanted to find a way to collaborate with the whales. My notion was to try to find a passage in one of the whale songs that I could play on my sax that could be a seed theme that we would develop into a composition, one in which we could credit some anonymous whale as the co-composer. So sometime in the early 70s, I got in touch with Roger to ask if I could borrow some tapes to listen through them. Roger very kindly invited me to come visit, and he and Katie were very welcoming. I was thrilled to learn that they too were musicians and that the 4 children were as well. They had a family string quartet. And I was especially pleased to know that Roger played cello, as this was the primary instrument besides my sax in the consort which I had formed in 1968. Coming home with many hours of reel-to-reel tapes Roger loaned me, I began listening. Finding a theme that I could play on my sax was daunting, as the great majority of the melodies the whales sing swoop through different frequencies. They don't land on the stair-step pitches that we use in most of our human music. But I finally found a rare passage of 8 notes that were in the range of my sax. And then at the piano, I searched for harmonies to accompany them. And the slow piece of the 8 notes seemed to call for a slow 3/4 rhythm. And as all this started to come together, it felt to me like a kind of lullaby. And then 2 other things came to mind. The first experience I had had regarding sea mammals was watching a documentary in the mid-60s about the slaughter of the baby harp seals on the ice near Newfoundland, where hunters come to club them to death at 2 weeks old, to get their white fur for gloves or trinkets to hang on our rearview mirrors. I was so outraged I couldn't sleep that night, and for a long time after that wondered what I might ever be able to do about that outrage. And the other thing was that we had learned from Roger that the whale songs carry for great distances through the sea. So remembering these two things, I imagined this piece as a kind of fantasy. That the whale song from one of the largest creatures in the sea was being sent out as a lullaby, a song of protection, to surround and protect these smallest of sea mammals when the hunters came. So I titled this, The Lullaby from the Great Mother Whale for the Baby Seal Pups.